Hi, this is Alan Campbell with Trucking Office, and we're going to take a look at dispatching and load status tracking using the Trucking Office Pro TMS system. So we're going to start off taking a look at the load planner part of the application. And when we look at the load planner, think of the load planner as your place to enter all your load information and plan out the load and work out all the details prior to dispatching it, meaning assigning it to a truck and a driver. So when you're entering a load into the load planner, you can see that the form that you fill out to enter the load is just a basic form where you enter your shipper and your consignee and your rate for the load and all the details about the load. Sometimes when you first know about a load, you don't know all the details. Like you might not know the day it's going to pick up, or you might not know the bill of lading number or pickup numbers or appointment times or any of that kind of stuff. But you can begin to put the information into the load planner until you work out those details. Some customers will give you like a whole bunch of loads at the beginning of the week and say, hey, we have 10 loads that need to be picked up this week. Let us know what days you're going to send the trucks in so that we can schedule appointments, etc. You could put all 10 of those loads in here, and then as you work out those details, then you can dispatch the loads by creating a trip. So I went ahead and entered some data in here up front to save us time on the video. So for example, this load that I already entered in here, if I wanted to dispatch this load, what I would want to do is view this load, and then we can take a look and see that all this information is already entered in, and then I just want to add a trip or dispatch the load. When I dispatch the load, what I'm really doing when I create a trip is I'm just assigning what driver is going to haul it and what truck are we going to use. So in this case, I'm going to say John Smith is going to haul the load. Now we already know he's assigned to this truck, and this is the last location of the truck. And this is the load that's selected because it's pre-selected because we clicked on create the trip when we were looking at the load. And then all this is just some optional information we're not going to cover right now. We're just simply dispatching the load and assigning it to that driver and that truck. And so here we can see that the trip was successfully created. And so when we go to the trips, we will think of the trip section as what the trucks are actually doing every day. So when you look at this, you can see what driver and what truck is doing each trip. Now when you're in the load planner, you can also create more than one load for each trip. That would accommodate doing like LTL loads and stuff like that. You may have 4 loads that are going to be on one trip. A trip is specified in the system from when you pick up one load until the truck is completely empty. So not as a round trip like you leave Ohio and you go to Chicago and you come back, not a round trip out and back, but as one trip where you start here and you deliver out there. You may have 2 or 3 loads that you're doing, like I said, in an LTL scenario, but it would start when you pick up the first pickup and it would end when you deliver the last delivery. So now that we've dispatched the loads onto the trips and we've assigned them, then when we want to understand what the status of each load is, we would go and look at the actual load section. So even if there was multiple loads on a trip, we would see them all individually on this list. So we started out in the load planner and then we dispatched the load when we created the trip. And what I want to talk to you about is this status section of the load list. So in the status section of the load list, as soon as you do that, the status becomes dispatched. That just means that it's assigned to a trip, which means that it's assigned to a truck and a driver, and that thing has been dispatched. Now when that happens and it's dispatched, that information is also sent to the driver's application on his phone if he's using the Trucking Office ELD. This automatically happens. You don't have to do anything extra. The driver the system knows what driver that's assigned to, so when that driver logs into his ELD and goes to the trip info section, he can set this trip as his active trip in the ELD driver app. So then when he does that, the next thing that would happen is he would go to pick the load up. When he goes to pick the load up, there's a checkbox that he can say when he's completed the pickup, he can check that off and save that on his phone. When he does that, the status would then change from dispatch to in transit, and we would know that the pickup is done and he's on the way. Once that happens, he can make it over to his delivery point, and when he gets to his delivery point, he can again go into his ELD phone app and check off the delivery as being completed. And when the delivery is completed, then our status on our load list would change to delivered. So we would then know that the load is delivered. So in this case, this one's delivered. So we have some at each status here as we go along through our list. After it's delivered, we're going to need to collect a bill of lading, a rate-con if appropriate, and so that we can invoice the load. Then once it's invoiced, we can see here that it would be invoiced, and then later on we're going to get paid for the load, and we'll be able to record that payment and we'll know that it's paid. So this load list becomes a real dynamic list so you can really tell what's going on a day-to-day basis. We can tell which loads are dispatched, which ones are in transit and delivered, invoiced, even paid. If you look further down the list, we can see an old one down here that never got paid. It stands right out. So we can tell really easily what's paid, what's not paid, what's in transit, what's dispatched, what's delivered, without having to bother the driver all the time for status updates. These communications can go back and forth. Also, when this load is dispatched and all the information is sent to that driver's app, it includes all the information that he needs. So it'll include his pickup numbers, his appointment times, everything he needs. So it eliminates a lot of extra steps in the load dispatching process for the dispatcher really, and for the driver. It just makes life easier all the way around. So it really becomes a great integrated system when you're using the TMS and the drivers are using the Trucking Office ELD. So that's a quick overview of how the dispatching system works, and we track the entire life cycle of the load from when you first find out about the load and you're entering the information in the load planner all the way through to when the load is paid for, including using the ELD app to send information to your driver, all the dispatching load details, as well as getting status updates from the driver back to the TMS system so that you know which loads are picked up, in transit, delivered, etc.